What does JD Vance have to say to Joe Rogan about immigrants?
I do think that immigration can enrich this country. I do think that, immigrants, many of them are bringing a lot of to the table, but we have to be honest with ourselves that permitting 500,000 immigrants in a society like ours is much different than permitting 5 million or 50 million immigrants. And importantly, where are the immigrants coming from? What are their values? What are their economic skills? There's something...
What's their criminal record?
What's their criminal record? There's something very, in sort of the modern... Again, this is a new thing because this is not Bill Clinton liberalism. This is something that we're seeing today where they don't even want to talk about the quality and the backgrounds and the skills of people coming into our country. Somehow it's fundamentally racist to say, well, we don't want certain people of certain backgrounds to be in the United States of America. No, it's just common sense. I mean, let me sort of give you a very specific example, okay? So, ask yourself, should America accept 100,000 immigrants from Mexico, okay? Just in the abstract. Well, Mexico is a gigantic country with millions upon millions of people. Who are we talking about? Are we talking about people who speak English as a second language and don't have criminal backgrounds? Or are we talking about people who don't even read and write in Spanish and do have criminal backgrounds? Because those same groups of people, even though they come from the country we call Mexico, are going to assimilate and contribute to America's society much differently. There's something in the modern liberal mind that doesn't even allow you to ask the question, who does America benefit from bringing into this country? And if the answer is we don't benefit, then why would we bring them into the country?
Well, it's also the concept of being anti-open border somehow or another became attached instead of safety. It became attached to xenophobia.
Yes.
It became attached to racism. And when you confront people and say, do you know that Venezuela is literally opening their prisons and instructing people to just cross into America?
Yes.
Like, no. When you tell one of the wildest ones, I think it was you, we're having a conversation with a woman where you're discussing the gangs in Aurora, Colorado that have taken
was me. Yeah.
And she was like, it's only a couple buildings.
And imagine if that's your community. It's only a couple of apartment complexes, right, with hundreds of people that have been taken over by Venezuelan gangs. I think, Joe, the right number
is
of
zero.
Apartment complexes taken over by Venezuelan gangs is zero.
It's insane.
How would you feel if this happened to your apartment complex or neighborhood?
San Antonio, too. It's happening in San Antonio.
It's happening everywhere.
It's so crazy that people don't want to admit to this because if they do, it's empowering the right.
Yeah.
And they think it's going to help Donald Trump get elected. So they're turning a blind eye to dangerous criminals crossing the border with no recourse, no tracking. You can't do anything about it.
Well, you see this in some communities where, because they're small towns and because rapid migrant influx can happen very quickly, where the town population has been doubled. Okay, so you don't even have to assume people are criminals. What does it do to the local public school when all of a sudden 1,000 newcomers show up that don't even speak English? Right? What does it do to the hospital system when you now have thousands of people in a small healthcare system that are showing up to get emergency services because they don't have access otherwise to a doctor, and now the American citizens have to wait in line for 7 hours to get to see a doctor because we've overwhelmed the local hospital system? What does it do to housing prices?
As someone working in the healthcare system, there absolutely has been a growing overwhelm on healthcare workers in terms of overload and new patients. This growth and overwhelm has been going on for a long time, though, but it has not gotten better.
I've seen this in a number of communities, including those that I represent in Ohio. When you bring in thousands upon thousands of people, you cannot build enough houses quickly enough to accommodate that, so the cost of housing becomes unaffordable for American citizens. It is the craziest thing that we've seen in this country that you don't even allow people to talk about the effects of mass migration anymore. And that's why I think it's one of the reasons why Donald Trump is going to be elected president, or at least should be elected president, because he's one of the few guys who's saying, you know what, no, we're going to talk about this problem. Yes, some immigrants are good. Some immigrants are not good, and that is an obvious insight to anybody who knows human nature.
What do you think is the goal behind allowing this to take place? Now, first of all, one of the things that Kamala Harris has said was that there was a bill that could have fixed the border problem, but that Donald Trump did not want it to take place because he wanted to keep this as a political talking point.
Totally dishonest. Totally dishonest.
What was the bill?
Okay, here was the bill. What happened is Okay. Let me talk about what the bill does, first of all.
Do you remember that interview we showed between Kamala Harris and Brett Baier? This was the bill she was telling him Trump killed, which she claimed caused the bad border control and support.
Okay. Number one is it sets a maximum cap on the number of illegal immigrants that we can have before the border shuts down. That maximum cap is 2 million illegal aliens per year. It's like 1.85 million, to be more precise. That's number one it did. Number two, it codified what's called catch and release, where a person comes into our country, they're an illegal immigrant, but they say, no, I'm not an illegal immigrant, I'm an asylum seeker. And so their claim for asylum gets adjudicated, but because there's a backlog, because we have so many, their claim isn't going to be adjudicated for 15 years. So rather than having that person wait in Mexico, we give them a work permit, and we give them legal status, and we let them come into the United States of America. That's called catch and release. Donald Trump's policy was you have to wait in Mexico. We're not going to catch you and then release you into the country for 15 years. It codified that. In other words, even if Donald Trump became president, and this was why he really hated it, is that he would not be able to undo catch and release if he won the election. It would be codified into American law. Third thing that it did, nothing on the border wall, nothing on an immigration system called parole, which is supposed to be a case-by-case, you grant parole to people who are fleeing tyranny. But Harris has used parole to the tune of millions upon millions, mass parole, whole categories of country have been paroled into the United States. It didn't do anything to solve that problem. So it wasn't a border security bill. Instead, it also gave some table scraps to Border Patrol. And that is what allows them to hinge onto that one thing and to say it's a border security bill. No. It was a mass amnesty bill. It would have made the border problem 10 times worse, and that's why they ultimately pushed it, and that's why Republicans fought against it. By the way, like 6 Democrats voted against that piece of legislation because they thought it was kind of a disaster. So it was not a bipartisan border bill. And in fact, it was much more bipartisan, the opposition to the legislation. But it has allowed Kamala Harris to go around and dishonestly claim that she cares about the southern border.
Like, comment, and subscribe for more.